Hi, this is Carl Polachuk, and this is another SOP video for managed service providers. Today I want to talk about how you can make sure that you make money when you do project estimates. In several of the books that I've written, I have chapters on how to do proper estimates for projects to make sure that you don't lose money. Obviously, Dana Goulston and I have a book on project management, but we also talk about this in the SOP series. In many videos, I have talked about billability for contracts, billability of technicians, making sure that you have these numbers so that you can use them to get proper estimates. This video is an example of exactly how you use that. So go find a video on billability or on working in real time, and you'll begin to see the argument behind why we track all of these things. But now let's look at a project. First of all, before you can estimate how much time you need for a project, you have to keep track of how much time it took you to do those things in the past. In our brains, we all have this sense of how long it takes to install Microsoft Office for one machine, or 10 machines, or 50 machines. Well, those numbers might be wrong. So you need to keep track of that in your tickets so that you can look and say, wow, it actually takes my team, whatever, 0.3 hours to install Microsoft Office on a brand new machine. Cool. Now you got that number and you can use it. But if you don't actually track it, you're just making numbers up in your head, and let's hope you're right. Next, you need to look at the billability of every technician. And I want to do a little bit of math with you on this one. So we're going to look at, let's assume you have 5 technicians, one of whom is the service manager. First, the service manager is going to be about 40% billable. What does that mean? That means you have to pay 2.5 hours of labor in order to get 1 hour that you can bill to the client or towards a flat fee contract or even managed services. Second technician is 50% billable. So this might be somebody who's new to your system or a younger tech, somebody who's in training. But basically, you're going to pay them 2 hours of labor for every 1 hour that you use towards delivering service on a project. 3, you've got a technician that's 60% billable. Okay, so you have to pay them 1.666 hours for every 1 hour that you're able to bill. Then let's throw in another technician who's also 60% billable, because that is a very common number. Finally, you've got one technician who's 80% billable. Why? Because he spends most of his time in a cubicle with a headset, doesn't travel anywhere, doesn't go out and install printers, doesn't do a lot of the lower level manual labor that makes people a little less billable. Okay, so the 80% billable person, you have to pay him for 1.25 hours in order to be able to bill the client 1 hour. Let's add it all up. So what happens is you're going to pay about 9 hours of labor for every 5 hours that's usable labor towards a project. Next, you need to figure out what these people actually cost you, because you say, oh, well, I'm paying him $20 an hour. That's true, but then you have Social Security, taxes, insurance, right? There's all kinds of stuff that goes into that besides simply their labor. So somebody who is earning $20 an hour might quite realistically cost you $35 or $40 an hour. So let's look at all of these technicians, and let's say somebody earns 80 and somebody earns 60 and somebody earns 75,000. So let's say that your average cost per technician, let's just round it up and say that it's $40 an hour. That's a reasonable number. If your average cost per technician is $40 an hour, let's say you've got a project that's 25 hours, you know that to buy 5 hours, you have to pay for 9. So to buy 25, you have to pay for 45 hours. Well, what does that mean? Quite realistically, at $40 an hour, 45 hours that you have to buy in order to deliver this project, it's going to cost you about $1,800 in hard money. Okay, we're not talking about the light bill and the rent and all the other stuff. Actual labor, direct cost, $1,800. Okay, that's fine. Now think about two things. First of all, what is your hourly charge? If you are charging, and I know this sounds ridiculous, but there are people charging $80 and $90 an hour in the 21st century. That is ridiculous, okay? Because even at $100 an hour, if you charge $2,500 for this project and you have to pay $1,800 in labor, if everything goes exactly the way you want it to go, you're going to make $700 profit. Is that enough? Is that a safe enough margin? So the first thing I want you to look at is your hourly billable rate. If you haven't raised it in the last year, do so immediately. There is absolutely no excuse for anybody to be under $100 an hour in this business. And I think most of you should be charging $120, $125, $150. The second thing I want you to consider is to put in a little buffer into that contract. So if I'm going to give the client an estimate for this, I'm usually going to add about 10% overhead and administration. And so that means that the 25-hour estimate becomes a I'm going to round it up, so it's going to become a 28-hour estimate. So now I'm expecting to get $2,800 even if I only charge $100 an hour. So even a 10% cushion is worthwhile. And this is a completely legitimate thing. Don't fret about this being bad or illegal or whatever. If you do any government contracts, you'll see immediately that they always have roughly a 10%, sometimes a 20% overhead for managing the contract. It's legitimate. It costs you money to manage a project, right? If nothing else, you have to pay for your PSA so you can keep track of all this so you can make sure that you make money next time. So think about this, go slow, put in the real numbers for the real people in your office. If you can't figure out the billability of your technicians, if you don't know what those real numbers are, please do yourself a favor and start clamping down on your processes and procedures. Because it's only when you have good, solid processes and everyone works in real time that you can figure out the billability of your technicians. And then calculations like this become very straightforward. Stay profitable, my friends. For Small Biz Thoughts, this is Carl Palachuk, wishing you the best of luck in your managed service business.